Welcome to the Employee Advocacy and Influence podcast. My name is Lewis Gray. I'm a senior marketing manager here at Disseminate. My co-host, as always, is Elliot Elsley, who is our director of sales operations and former director of customer success too. But most importantly, we have a special guest today, and that guest is Jordan Tennenbaumm. So Jordan is the head of social media at Talkdesk, and Talkdesk is a company that we've admired for some time here at Disseminate, namely because of the work that they do on their corporate social media, specifically their LinkedIn. So when I saw Jordan talking about employee advocacy on LinkedIn, I knew this was somebody that we needed to reach out to. So firstly, Jordan, welcome. Thank you for coming on. Would you mind just giving us a bit of history on your role and your story in working in social media?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Lewis and Elliot, and really happy to be here. Um, I can probably relate to Elliot a little bit in this one. I started my career in sales. I did sales for 7 years between being a BDR, SDR, account executive for small startups, medium startups, pretty large startups. After 7 years of banging my head on a wall dealing with quota, I said, this is not for me, even though that's kind of what I always wanted to do. And I was lucky enough to transition into the world of social media. A colleague of mine knew that I had some pretty good writing skills because he had seen how I communicate with clients or potential customers and try to persuade them to take a demo. And he thought, well, maybe you can use that skill and that background to persuade people to, sign up for a webinar or attend attend an event, running social media. And so I was hired to do social media 5+ years ago. I've worked at 4 companies since then, doing it for, again, small companies, medium companies, and now Talkdesk, a pretty large enterprise size SaaS company. And I think I kind of found my home and my niche here at Talkdesk. And yeah, I just absolutely love my job. I'm a huge fan of working in social media. I'm a huge fan of the social media manager community. And I've gotten really into a lot of different aspects of social media. One of which, and probably the main reason why I'm here, is employee advocacy.
Amazing. Yeah, I appreciate you giving us that the history of how you kind of got into social. It's always interesting to hear from people such as yourself who have such an enthusiasm for it, because it's kind of like a running joke within people that work in social media. They have those days where it's just like they want to do anything but, because it's so fast moving, it's constantly changing. There's these constant curveballs from the likes of Meta and the various other platforms. But it's infectious, and it's something that I got from our initial conversation. So yeah, I appreciate you going into your story there. Jordan, we like to start every podcast episode when we have a guest with a couple of quick fire questions as almost like a warm up. But it's just good to get an external take on some what we'd call employee advocacy FAQs. So putting you on the spot a little bit here, are you okay if we just rattle through 3 of these quickly?
Shoot them off. I'm ready.
Amazing. So first and foremost, what's the most important metric you're looking at for advocacy content performance?
I would say shares over a specific time period. I think it's a pretty basic one, but considering when I started at Talkdesk, there was, let's say X shares per month to where we are now, up to Y shares per month, which is it's been a massive increase. And apologies, I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head. I think that's maybe not the deepest metric, but it's a really good service level metric to look at to see how engaging is your content, how much do people care about it, how much of a habit have you built around employee advocacy in terms of employees sharing content. And it's just like, you can look at that and have a pretty good idea of what's going on in terms of employee advocacy.
Yeah, I love that answer. To be honest, it's quite refreshing to hear, because I don't think from all the guests that we've had on, we haven't really had somebody kind of focus on a employee engagement metrics. That's awesome to hear. So the next one was, are you currently measuring the cost per click from employee shares?
We measure cost per click. It's actually assigned by our employee advocacy tool, so they automatically do that. So we do measure it, but I think that kind of ties into the more important metric, which is if you multiply all those clicks by how many clicks are happening, you get the earned media value. And the cost per click is important, of course. We just don't necessarily determine it, but what we do determine is how that all adds up into earned media value, which is something that we definitely track. And I know my bosses and executive team really care about because it's free money.
I love that. That's brilliant. Yeah, it's great to see that you're focusing on a variety of metrics as well. And then, very lastly, this is always a difficult one because this is something that we could produce a whole podcast discussing. But if you had to choose just one thing, what would you say is the key to employee advocacy success?
I'd say education. I think a lot of people don't know what employee advocacy is. I don't think they know how to engage in employee advocacy. They don't know how to use whatever employee advocacy platform you're using. They don't know what's the best way to take advantage of the algorithm on a specific social media, what types of posts perform best, why they perform best. And if you just kind of tell people, like, hey, go do this, well, yeah, they can do it, but it's not going to be very good. And so if you can spend time educating, different teams, sales, customer success, executive leadership team, BDRs and SDRs, and showing them each kind of a specific tailored way to engage with employee advocacy, that really helps give them a solid base and a solid foundation um, to be as effective doing employee advocacy as possible. And so I'd rather have 50 people doing really good employee advocacy rather than 100 people doing really bad employee advocacy. And I think the way to achieve that is education. And with education, you can start with those 50 doing really good employee advocacy, and you can eventually grow it to 100 or 200 doing great employee advocacy. So I'd say education is probably the most important.
That's so interesting. And yeah, I think we're in for a very insightful episode just off the back of those three answers, because it sounds like you're tracking so many different things. But we can unpack that a little bit further on because I'm sure we'll naturally come onto it. But Jordan, I know obviously you're managing the program at Talkdesk at the moment, the employee advocacy program. Um, I know obviously we said ahead of time for, I guess, just to give the listeners a little bit of context, we just wanted to really come on and just have a conversation and share our experiences with employee advocacy. But I did just jot down a few things that I wanted to pick your brains on. So we've got a couple of questions around, I guess, the three main stages of an employee advocacy program. So I've got some around pre-launch, around the launch phase, and then just kind of continued management and, you know, long-term success. So the
Sure.
first question that I had, I guess, if we start at the start, is what is the primary focus of your employee advocacy programs? Do you have key objectives or anything like that?
I'd say my biggest goal is just to get people involved in social media. And there's two main reasons that I want to do that. First is to help the company, and second is to help themselves. CVs and resumes are great in terms of building your personal brand, but nowadays, there's like an AI tool reading it, or a recruiter has 600 applicants to a job. And I think if people can start to engage in social media, through the lens of employee advocacy, they're doing two things. They're building their own brand, they're building up themselves, they're building up their worth for their current job. Maybe they're going to get promoted, or for a future job. Most people don't stay at the same company forever. So the first thing is they're really building up their own brand and making themselves like a force to be reckoned with. At the same time, you're killing two birds with one stone. You're also helping your company, which means your company has a larger brand voice, a larger brand presence. Your company secures more deals. Your company gets more leads in the top of the funnel. Your company makes more money, which means you're probably going to get a raise at some point. So um, it's really like a two birds with one stone type situation. People can take care of themselves and take care of the business at the same time without really like having to put in double the effort. So I guess in tech sales terms, like higher ROI. That's kind of how I see it.
It's really nice to hear you talk about people's career progression beyond the business that they're actually in. I've had so many conversations over the years in regards to this, and a couple of those conversations whose clients will remain unnamed, but they've almost been conscious of that to go, well, what if people become too popular on LinkedIn and then they get poached from elsewhere, which is quite a sort of negative viewpoint of what you're trying to achieve, in my opinion. But it's really nice to hear that, because I think that's such an important value proposition for an employee. And I think probably a lot of people's challenge when it comes to advocacy is, how do we get people bought into this? How do we get them as like a sort of vested interest in this as a tool and as a program? And being able to highlight, hey, this creates a lot of career prospects for you. People know who you are. People will reach out to you. It presents very, very minimal risk to the business if it's done well, but is so, so valuable for employees. And, likely by the sounds of things, for how you found yourself at Talkdesk, probably a factor in you probably finding roles yourself as well.
I was about to say that's a huge part of how I got my role is putting myself out there. Like I'm a pretty private person, but I'll put myself out there on LinkedIn specifically because I know it will help me in my career in the long term. And I mean, I work in social media, so I at least should have some, proof in the pudding. And so, um, yeah, it absolutely helped me get my role, and I think it's helped a lot of other people. And the thing I'll say is, if employers are worried about their employees getting too popular and getting poached, well, they should just pay them more.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I mean, it's really refreshing to hear you talk about the internal and external benefits as well, because like we've mentioned, it's almost like taboo. Companies don't want to talk about the external career progression that their employees might see as a result of growing their personal brands. But it's a really effective way to get employees on board with this kind of thing, or your colleagues, I should say, really. It's just communicating the internal benefits and the career progression that they could see off the back of it. But that's kind of teed up the next question I had quite nicely, which was around communicating the employee value proposition. How have you done that at Talkdesk? How did you get employees on board?
Honestly, I kind of spoke to them, and I'm doing trainings upcoming with different groups, like I mentioned, and during these trainings, I'm not only teaching people the how to be an employee advocate and how to create content on LinkedIn and how to build your brand and hype up your own company, but I'm teaching them the why, and the why is, yeah, you'll help your company, but you're also going to help yourself. And I think that's what gets people really excited and motivated and into it.
Is that super sort of customized per, I guess, department? CS comparatively to sales. CS might be a lot more kind of relationship focused. Sales much more kind of warming leads up, trying to get more contact, that sort of thing.
It's not as different as you'd expect. I'd say the biggest difference is between all teams and the ELT, or the executive leadership teams, basically VP and C level. They're kind of their own beast because they have way busier schedules, bigger fish to fry than, like, they might think like, I'm not just going to go post on LinkedIn. Like, I don't have time for that. And, they do. Everyone has time for that. That's what I always say. But they're the ones that their thought leadership content, which is, kind of under the umbrella of employee advocacy, really matters. They're the ones that can get the most amount of high quality leads into and through the top of the funnel. And so teaching them their value and importance and clout on social media, the ELT team, that's what really requires kind of a different approach. The rest is, whether it's, again, sales, customer success, engineers. What I always kind of preach is, talk about the company some, but also just like really talk about what you know, and what each team knows is different. So the sales teams, they should talk about, what's working in sales, what's going on, trends, techniques. For the engineers, they should talk about Kubernetes or new coding languages or new coding platforms, or something cool that they built. The CSM should share their customer success stories. But the how they do that in terms of like creating content on LinkedIn is going to be relatively similar. It's just the content that they're producing is going to be most likely different. And so it's kind of nice because I can create a presentation for one team and just alter it slightly to teach other teams the same thing, and then just encourage them to, again, talk about what they know when they're creating employee advocacy content, which helps out a lot because it makes my job easier, and it makes it makes sure that they're super clear on what they need to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I've seen it in so many different formats with the training. It's nice to hear that you recognize that there's always going to be that white glove approach that you need with the kind of senior leadership teams. They need a little bit more one-on-one time. Sometimes they need a little bit more one-on-one time for the how as well, is something I've experienced. Sometimes just reminding them how to log into LinkedIn can be a 10-minute conversation in itself. But
don't forget to tag Talkdesk or something like you got to do the @ and then click from the drop down. I get it.
Yeah. We've all been there in those conversations, but it's nice to hear that you do that kind of slightly larger scale training for those teams and those different areas and just tweak it slightly. I've had, clients in the past that have been very insistent on wanting to do almost one-to-one training with every single person that joins their program. And I think where you can say, actually, the process is exactly the same for everyone. You're just posting your end objective is the thing that's going to change ever so slightly, means you can scale this up, right? You can not spend weeks at a time on your side of things having to do so much training for people. You can trust that if people know what they want to talk about and they know how to do it, then we can kind of get that process in place really easily.
100%. Let people talk about what they know about. And I think one other thing is like to keep in mind, like it's a team effort, but it's not like a dictatorship. And I can never tell people what to do on their personal LinkedIn. I can never say like, you have to post this. If they don't want to, they don't want to. And I always tell people like, that's fine. You got to give people an out because some people are private. Some people don't have a LinkedIn. Some people aren't comfortable. Some people are too busy, like, whatever it is. But, I think, 85, 90% of people are generally with the program, and those who don't want to participate, well, fine by me. Don't build your own brand, and you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, but I'm not going to stop you.
Yeah, and I think it's varying degrees, right? Some people might just want to announce like those big items for the business, maybe like quarterly results, things like that. They'll touch base every few months and share something, and that's where they're at. That's what they're comfortable with. I think that's completely fine. If somebody wants to post 3 times a day, maybe we're reaching limits just from an algorithm perspective, but if somebody wants to do that, they're more than welcome to.
100%.
Yeah, I'm curious to know. I know we've obviously spoken about the how. You have those instances where it is a case of really having to hold the hands of senior leadership to get them posting on LinkedIn. But I don't want you to feel you have to kind of share company secrets here. But how did you communicate the why to them? What was the process of really getting them on board with sharing more?
I think the best way to do that is to get an internal advocate on the ELT team, and you gotta, maybe not canoodle's the right word. You got to get to know these people. You got to befriend them. And there's a few people, and they have to know that you know what you're talking about. And so, like I've posted on LinkedIn a lot about like my success and what's working. And I know specific people at the ELT team have seen what I've posted and have been impressed by it, which means they think highly of me and they trust what I'm going to do and say. And so that way, when I go to them and I say, hey folks, I need you to do this. This is why, this is how, instead of being like, who's this new guy? I don't give 2 craps about him. It's, oh, here's this guy who knows what he's talking about. Let's maybe listen. And so, first is like, I need to set myself up for success and make myself look good so that people trust me and view me as an expert in this field. And then the next step would be getting internal advocates and people who care. And I know there's like a few people at our company on the ELT team, very, very high up, some of which I'm pretty close to, some of which I've actually never even talked to. But I know that they really care about posting content on LinkedIn, and they are my advocates to get other ELT team members to, post. So I can go to my one specific person on my team and I can shoot him a Slack and say like, hey, I need you to tell the rest of the ELT team to post this link, and here's the copy. And he'll say done, like within 5 minutes. And having an advocate like that, who's super high up, it's kind of like, it's like an alley oop. I toss him the ball, he slam dunks it, and then we have posts from a spread of the ELT team. And so having people like that is super important. But you can't get that internal advocate until you prove your worth. So it's kind of like a 2-step process to get to have execution happen on the ELT team in terms of employee advocacy.
Do you find that has a knock-on impact for the rest of the program as well? Something I typically see is, the more of the executive leadership that you have on board, the more everybody else starts to buy in, because there's just like a lead by example element of all of this, which is, oh, if they're doing it, then I should be doing it. And some people are more inclined to be follow suit essentially as to what senior leadership are doing. Have you seen an impact the more you've had from the senior leaders?
Yeah, 1,000%. And I think the more that the senior leadership, has that effect on people, the more that they themselves realize it, how important content creation, thought leadership, employee advocacy is, and then the more likely they'll not only lead by example, but lead by direction and say like, okay, hey, this team post about this. And then it's like, not only are they telling the team to do it, but they're leading by example. And so the team's like even more likely to continue to post about whatever event or, award or win or whatever it is. And so, yeah, that's a huge factor in it for sure.
We had a client in an entertaining scenario where we have a leaderboard in our platform to kind of highlight who's doing the best, who's got the most points, the most clicks. It was the CEO and the COO of the business were really bought in, which massively helped the kind of scale of the program and how quickly they kind of got it up and running. But they were always, the CEO and COO were always top of the leaderboard without fail, which was fantastic because it let everybody kind of drive their way up the leaderboard and compete and see who was doing really, really well. The interesting part was when they introduced gamification, they started introducing some rewards and some prizes for it. So they had to quickly exclude those CEO and the COO from the leaderboard to make sure that the CEO wasn't winning the $50 Amazon gift card that was for first place, which was an interesting U-turn that they had to take.
It's a good problem to have when the ELT team, VP and C levels are leading that. And the platform that we use for employee advocacy, you can absolutely filter, specific employees out, which we have. I actually keep them on because they're not always at the top of the leaderboard, but I want people to feel competitive.
Yeah.
But if they were consistently at the top of the leaderboard, yes, I think filtering them out is probably a good idea.
Definitely. I actually find sending the kind of ELT their own miniature leaderboard can go a really long way. I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but if you can privately send them all an email and go, hey, just FYI, here's the informal rankings for this quarter, tends to light a fire under a few people, and they're ELT for a reason. They tend to be quite competitive people by nature.
I think that's a fantastic idea, and I think that speaks to something else that's kind of really important in employee advocacy for all teams as well as the ELT is getting people to do something consistently helps them build a habit. It kind of Pavlov's them, for lack of a better word. And then, maybe they were competitive in January, but in February it's a habit. And then in February, March, so I'm forgetting the order of my months. March, it's like, oh, it's on their calendar to do once a week. And then April, they just do it without even thinking. And so I think that's something else that's really important in employee advocacy. And I know I'm kind of like changing the subject, but it's just building habits. And that's, it starts with just making one post and then another and another. And I think that's the hardest part of the job of employee advocacy is just getting people to build habits,
Definitely.
And so that's what my job entails in terms of employee advocacy.
I think that's also where having a tool makes that process a lot easier. I tend to find the people that I like having that first foray into employee advocacy. They'll use a Slack channel or they'll have an email chain and they'll send it weekly or they'll send it daily or whatever their kind of cadence is. Eventually that email becomes stagnant, right? Because I just get the same ping on Slack each week, and this week I ignored it, and the week after I ignored it. Whereas when you've got a tool, there's different notifications. You might have a mobile app. People are getting push notifications to their phone. There's all these different ways you can kind of communicate with people and show them different things, not just here's another article. Can everybody share it? It's you're doing really well this week. You're outperforming X teammate, whatever it might be. All those different comms help that habit building as well. It's just another engagement and another way to pull them into the tool, essentially.
I think you're absolutely right. I think there's also just a fine line between, and this is whether it's a Slack and email or software, is like information overload, like, almost like to the point where it's annoying. Like I don't subscribe to I'm the one who's put it together. So I don't subscribe to our advocacy platform. And I think if we had a mobile app, I wouldn't, because I just get too many pings on too many channels. But I think as long as whether it's like a digest that gets sent to your email, or like an app that sends one notification a day, like here's the top 3 posts you should share. There's a fine line between too much and too little, but as long as the software and the platform balances that fine line, it's fantastic. And I'm sure
Definitely.
Disseminate does a great job at that. I know the platform we use does a good job at that, but it's just, that's just kind of important with any piece of software, is like, basically don't be too annoying. I
Yeah.
mean, good
I think
UI,
it's
good
just
UX.
give users the option, I think, is the best approach for all of this. If you want to get a daily email, subscribe to a daily email. If you want to get a push notification once a day, you can have that as an option. We did a little while back, but we did some kind of user research on this to try and understand it, because we were considering sort of, do we even need emails? Do people actually kind of want to? We're looking at our open rates and they're still good, but we're wondering whether people really need them. And actually, when we did that sort of interview process with a bunch of users, we found so many people were so keen on the emails. We were really surprised. But it was, sometimes just older heads at the business that are like, I like a daily digest email. That's a nice way for me to consume this information. But you talk to the 22-year-old new SDR at the business, they're like, don't send me emails. They're the worst thing in the world. Just ping my phone. That's all I'm after. So you just have to balance these things.
Give them options. I think that's the best choice in any software, is give people options. Email, notification, no notification, a pigeon flies by and squeaks in your ear or whatever, just give people options.
Completely agree.
I think there's something to be said as well about making it interesting and engaging if you are utilizing notifications. So if you're sending out emails to employees, if they've opted in to receive email notifications, to say when there's new content ready to share, for example, keep it interesting. If you can customize it, if you can work on different subject lines every time. There's a really great example I'm thinking of from a case study we did a while back, where within the emails that they'd send out with the new content that was available, there was almost like a story within there. So it could be anything from like a joke, so like best Halloween jokes, or something along those lines. They're always topical, but just something else in there that made their colleagues want to open the email, and it wasn't just the same thing every time. Because I think that's part of the notification fatigue issue, is the fact that you just become accustomed to the same notifications all the time, and you see them in your inbox. If you didn't open it yesterday, you're probably going to delete it today.
1,000%. I've actually talked with the company that we use for employee advocacy, because their email is titled like digest, and I was like, can we change this? Like, can we make it something more fun? They were like, no, like we'll put that in as a feature request. I'm like, okay, but like digest, like this is not 1875. Like let's get the name like updated to like social fun time, or like something like interesting. Digest makes it sound like like I just had a big meal, I'm about to digest it. Like no one wants to read that. Like let's get a the Talkdesk Times, or like whatever. Like, and again, that's such a simple UI or UX or whatever it is change that can increase open rate. It can increase engagement, like a lot. But it's like, the software needs to mold to what people want. And digest is not the name, but I digress.
Not to plug Disseminate, but it's exactly what we do. We have those dynamic subjects. So I think it does make a big difference. We saw a spike in the engagement rate off the back of it, but alas,
It's huge.
I mean, just to throw one more example out there, something that I started doing last year. So anytime there's new content ready to share within Disseminate, so obviously we'll use our own tool. I would fire notifications into Slack. So we just set up an integration so they would fire there. But I would just customize the message every time. And I'm sure he won't mind me saying this. One of our colleagues in sales, Craig, I would just make up elaborate fake stories about him every time. That's just like the most outrageous stuff. I wish I could pull one from from my mind now, but just stuff like that. I mean, I just heard positive feedback from people saying that they enjoyed it, but as long as they were seeing what I wanted them to see, then ultimately it's worth putting that little bit of extra time in. And you can use ChatGPT for this kind of thing now, and other large language models to kind of spice things up. It doesn't have to be boring. It's so easy to make it interesting. But I was curious to know, Jordan, we've kind of touched on a few engagement tactics. You mentioned at the beginning that that's something that you're hot on. You're looking at, shares as an important metric to stay on top of, and ensuring that's constantly increasing. We've touched on leaderboards and gamification. Is that something that you're actively using within your program as well?
We do. It's not a huge part, and again, like my job is content creator, occasionally video editor, graphic design requester, scheduler of all content, employee advocacy, ELT team, consultant for thought leadership. Like I wear a lot of hats. And so we have started gamification and leaderboards. It's not, I think if I had like an assistant, I could be like, hey, that's your job right now. Please get to it. So I'm spread a little thin, but we have done it and we've had some pretty good success. It's a little bit more of like a manual process, which is like, oh, whoever shares the most, uh, posts in August will get a Talkdesk branded hoodie. And then I keep people updated, once a week. I put a thing on my calendar and Sally's winning the leaderboard. John's taken over. He's in second place. Which it doesn't take a lot of time, but when I have a million other things and we have launches and um, campaigns going on, it's a little challenging. But I do think it's really important to have a leaderboard and update people about the leaderboard and gamify these types of things. It's just I got so much on my plate that I got to make sure like the post goes out and there's not grammatical or spelling mistakes. But again, if I had unlimited time and power, gamification and leaderboard and inclusion would be very high at the top of my list because it is super important.
Definitely. It just tends to, I think you tend to find as well, it comes back to that almost what we were saying about habit forming and kind of just getting people into the process. That's where I've seen gamification be so impactful, particularly at some of the really large businesses that we work with where they're 50,000 employees. There's often a lot of people that sit on the fence at those businesses where they're just kind of apathetic towards it. They've got a huge sales team, thousands of people. As if you can just say, this quarter, this month, we're giving away a pair of AirPods for the person that generates the most reactions on LinkedIn over the course of the quarter. That's the thing that people go, well, maybe I could do that. And it just tips them over the fence to give it a try and just start that sharing process as well. It's not just the long-term engagement is a really good way to kind of spike the initial interest from people. But it's a powerful tool, I think, no matter how you use it at any business. And it's a nice way to give back, right? It's a nice way to say thank you to people. It's a nice way to just embellish the culture a little bit more.
Well, and it's just a smart business decision. I mean, if let's say you're, God, what is it? Sorry, I'm blanking out. If your earned media value is, let's say, $100,000 a month, well, spend $1,000 and reward your team. Okay, now it's 149,000. You're, or 99,000. Like you're still making money. You're still doing well, and now people have something to actually like really care about. Yeah, whether it's AirPods, whether it's like a set of whatever these headphones are that are more expensive than AirPods, whether it's a $500 DoorDash gift card, which is like huge, like cool, you can buy dinner for 2 weeks straight and never have to cook and your family's happy, or take a vacation or whatever it is. Like the reward aspect should be should have a direct relation to like the earned media value, and that only just helps out more.
Yeah, I've actually seen almost like non-tangible rewards work quite well. I think depending on the business that you're working in, some of the businesses, big management consultancy firms that we work with, everybody's paid well, I'm going to go with, as a polite way of describing it. They're not as interested in a $200 Amazon gift card or something along those lines. They can go and buy whatever they want, whenever they want. The things that have worked really well at a lot of those businesses is, lunch with a partner, lunch with a senior exec, or, half a day off goes quite a long way at those businesses as well. So those sort of less financial driven prizes, you don't have to go buy a load of stuff in and post it out to everyone. Those can also work really, really well from that perspective. Even charity donations, we've seen huge amounts of people engage from that perspective as well. Will donate X amount of money for X amount of shares this month.
They'll do anything for a tax write-off, huh?
That is true.
I mean, gamification in general is obviously a great way to kind of incentivize participation, but then I think there's also an acknowledgement element to it as well, where, employees can be seen to be performing well. If you've got, again, I have to use Disseminate as the example, but if you're logging into your platform, you've got a leaderboard on the main feed that shows the top sharers, it's kind of acknowledging their efforts as well as kind of putting them on a bit of a pedestal. But that's a huge part of it when we talk about continued engagement, is acknowledging and showing appreciation to your colleagues, your employee advocates. Do you have any methods, Jordan, for doing this at Talkdesk? Do you have anything that you kind of regularly do to show acknowledgement?
Well, like I said, we have given out some awards in the past, small things. I think we could probably do a better job. I know when I talk to people, if I'm having a Slack with them or, a Zoom call, I'll specifically like mention, hey, great job sharing content. Like, I appreciate you, which is nice, but it's probably not enough. And I think we're, recognizing and honoring the people that participate a lot is really important. And I think that's probably an area where we fall short. And again, I'm spread thin, so I don't have time to go write people custom messages, all the time and thank them on a weekly basis. I could definitely do a better job, but now that I'm thinking about that, it'd be pretty cool if I could go to the leaderboard and then click, like select. Maybe this is a cool product idea for you guys. Let's say like the top 10 people on the leaderboard, you can press like select the top 10 and then, like send thanks. And then you press one button and ChatGPT, if you guys are integrated with that, writes, a really quick, like in my personal voice email thanking people for their participation and then sends it off to them automatically. Um, you know, Again, maybe that's a little bit cold and like not as nice as like me personally thanking them over the phone or over Slack, but it's a cool way to recognize people and support them for their support. But yes, I could definitely do a better job of doing that.
Not to give the game away, but there's features like that in process of being built at Disseminate already. So it's that's nice to hear from my perspective.
I mean, Elliot, I'm glad you can do the Disseminate plugging for me. Because I can usually summarize these bits and bobs in an email, but it's good to have these things on the record, I guess. But no, I mean, even just liking and commenting on advocates' posts I've seen can go an immensely long way. The amount of clients of ours that I've spoken with who are just like, oh yeah, I will like go out of my way to select a few advocates from the platform, just click on their LinkedIn profiles and just go like some of their most recent posts, just to say, hey, I see you doing this and I appreciate it. It's not, obviously the byproduct of employee advocacy is employees growing their personal brands by demonstrating thought leadership. But ultimately, the business still benefits from this, and it starts as a business initiative. But just going out of your way to just kind of like comment on a few posts, and I know there's a few Talkdesk employees that have made it to my feed since we've been connected, Jordan. So I know that's something that you're doing currently. But I've just seen it can go such a long way. It kind of says it without saying it, I would say.
Well, and it's interesting. We talked about like two birds, one stone earlier, and I guess I didn't think about just like liking as a way to thank, but I do that every single day. From if anyone at Talkdesk makes a post, whether it's about Talkdesk or not, unless it's like something weird, I like it from the Talkdesk account. 90, maybe 85% of the time, I'll also like it from my personal account, and I do that for two reasons. One, because I want to. Well, actually, three reasons. One, because I want to thank them and make sure that they know that their content is being seen. So I definitely do thank people in that way. Second reason I do it is to build community and get people engaged and being reciprocal in terms of liking other people's content. So a little bit of community building. And then the third reason is because it builds Talkdesk brand, because our name is everywhere. I probably get, I don't know, between 200 and 400 notifications a day on our company page. Many, some of those are just people liking stuff, but a lot of them are people commenting and resharing. And on every single one, every single day, minimally, they get a like from Talkdesk. The next step would be they get a like from Talkdesk and a like from me. The third best option would be a like from both and a comment from Talkdesk. And if it's a really high quality post, they'll get a like from both and a comment from both me and Talkdesk. And that way they know that I care about their post. I'm helping them, and Talkdesk cares. So we're thanking them. We're building community by, kind of starting dialogue all over the internet. And then we're getting the Talkdesk name everywhere. And so it's kind of like I guess, three birds with one stone. Thanking people is good, but also you can build community and spread brand awareness at the same time.
A cool way to do that I've seen as well is, some of those, yours are a little bit more selective, and not that one post is more important than the other, but in the world of social media, the one with the most likes tends to be a bit more important. You can grab some of those posts, firing those across to that ELT team as well can be a really, really fun game to play to really expand their thought leadership presence, where you just say, hey, here's a little comment, would love for you to just drop this on here. It's in your remit, it's in your wheelhouse. Providing that access for people goes a really, really long way to kind of scaling that as well.
Or even asking the ELT team to share a post. Because then it's like the content's already written. They just have to say like, couldn't agree more with Jimmy, and then it's like done. 2 seconds. Don't even have to think about it. Or even I could write their repost with thoughts, and I could write their thoughts. And so, I think that's a fantastic idea to get ELT team involved and active on social.
100%. Well, Jordan, one thing that I really wanted to get your take on while we've got you today is around a topic that's really, it's a big talking point within Disseminate at the moment. We've just released the Employee Advocacy Benchmark report, and there were a couple of stats in there around how organizations were measuring success, but also how they define success. So I'm curious to know from your standpoint at Talkdesk, how do you define success, and then how do you ultimately measure that?
Well, there's, I guess, like 4 main statistics that we track. The first is how many stories are we actually publishing through our employee advocacy platform, per month, per week, per 6 months, whatever it is. When I first started, that number was really low. Now the number is really high. So that's a huge measure of success, that just someone's using the employee advocacy platform all of the time. And I'd say 98% of posts that we make get sent to our employee advocacy platform. Sometimes there's like a one-off, like random one. Like if we do like a post in like German language that's localized to Germany, we have, I don't know how many employees in Germany, not that many. So maybe if I'm super busy, I won't send it that one day, but almost all the posts get sent to employee advocacy. So stories per period is huge. Shares per period, I know I talked about that earlier. That's a really important metric and measure of success. Again, like shares per month were pretty low in the past. Now they're much, much higher. And so that just means our brand voice and presence is expanding. More people are participating in this program. So that's, shares per period is huge. The next one would be the average shares per user, whether that's per week or per month. Again, that was pretty low when we started. Now it's pretty high. And so it's very cool to see that kind of like habit forming Pavlov response that we talked about earlier actually happening, where people are just getting used to the platform and they understand this is a new piece of software they're used to. And, their shares per the shares per users are just going up. And then finally, earned media value. So cost per click multiplied by how many people are sharing or how many clicks. That's a metric that it's cool for me to read and talk about, but the ELT team and the marketing leaders really care about that, because that's budget that they don't have to spend. They can allocate it somewhere else. They could give me a raise, that kind of stuff. So those are really important measures of success. But I think kind of like a soft metric that no one really talks about, and I'm just gonna pump myself up a little bit, is like when I'm talking to the ELT team. Like I had a meeting with one of our VPs yesterday because she asked me to make a one-off post, and I told her I was gonna be out next week, and she was like, "Well, don't worry, like you've earned it. you've had such a huge impact, like you've been so successful. And she's talking about social media, but I'm combining social media and employee advocacy in this time. And she goes, oh, everyone's talking about it, and even our CEO has recognized it, and we're just like so thankful to have you. And like, there's no analytics that I can run on the statement that she made, but having people notice social and employee advocacy, like when before they were just like, oh, that's like a part of our business, and now they're like, oh, I'm like seeing this all the time. There's a huge change. Like the brand voice is more fun, the content is more engaging. There's like video now. Like having people like say that to you, obviously it feels really good, but it's also a really important measure of success. When before, like I don't think the ELT team was saying that to Talkdeskers. And again, we didn't have like a person like full time doing social, so no knock on the person who was running social. They had a whole nother job. But now that I'm taking over social and employee advocacy, it's very noticed. And having ELT team people like say that they see the success is like a huge measure of success in my book. One, because it makes me feel good, and two, because I actually think it's reflective of the work that we're putting into social and employee advocacy.
I've seen that, and that's actually such a good point, and I'm really glad you've said it. I think particularly EA as well is one of the elements that really gets you noticed effectively, because you're just touching so many departments in the business. Typically marketing teams aren't siloed; they're touching all of these areas of the business and working with them. But with EA, you are quite literally almost sort of working with each of these people individually. I've seen at a few businesses that we've worked with, people have got kind of promotions not directly off the back of it, off the back of the work that they're doing, I'm sure, but they're suddenly so much more notable within the business because, hey, there's this name that keeps popping up as well. So from like internal perspective, getting that visibility is so powerful off the back of it as well.
There's
I'm keen to understand, just from a reporting standpoint, do you report, because you manage social media, it's nice to kind of get this insight. Do you report employee advocacy and social media kind of metrics separately to the senior leadership team, or do you report them as kind of one bulked social media metric?
It honestly just depends on what they ask for. Sometimes they'll just say like, what were the numbers for the campaign? It's like, okay, I'm not going to pull like, it's also like a lot harder, at least with what the software we use, to pull employee advocacy for a specific campaign, because I can't, I don't know how, but associate like all of the shares that went through our employee advocacy platform to a specific campaign by tagging. Like maybe that's possible with Disseminate. I don't think it is with the platform that we use. But it really does depend on what they ask. I definitely report on employee advocacy, just if it's been like a month or so. I'd say the majority of the time it's just strict social numbers analytics. That being said, like our advocacy numbers and analytics look really good. So I have no reason not to throw them in. It's just typically ELT team is asking for something more specific, which is typically social or like campaign analytics.
Mm-hmm.
But if there was an easy way to tie employee advocacy to regular campaign analytics, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I've seen it done a few ways, but it's interesting. Clients do it in all sorts of different ways, and it's obviously dependent on what the reporting people kind of want, as you say, what the SLT team are asking for. Some people split them out as two separate line items, and if they take social media as a whole, they'll say, here's our paid, here's our organic, here's our employee advocacy. Other people will go, here's the general social media, here's employee advocacy as a totally separate column. Some people just muddle it all together. There's so many ways to report on it, but it's always an interesting one to understand.
Totally. Couldn't agree more. I just, maybe like another feature that Disseminate would do is like somehow tying employee advocates to social analytics. So I don't, again, I'm just kind of thinking out loud this, again, maybe you guys already do this, but if there was like a simple way, like a column within your reporting or within your analytics tool that just says like, here's all the social analytics, here's how much of it came from employee advocacy, that could be interesting.
Yeah, it's like you're in our product meetings. I won't comment any
You
further
need
than that.
Elliot. You need a button that you hit, and then a sign behind you says "Disseminate." Does that?
Disseminate does this.
Yeah, get that request in. That would be just then you don't even have to. You can just hit the button. Disseminate does it. I'm like, all right, next.
Well, Jordan, this is always my least favorite part of the episodes because unfortunately it's the time where I have to bring a great conversation to a close. But I know you're an incredibly busy man. You've been kind enough to give us almost an hour at this point of your day, so we really appreciate it. I did just have one final question, and this can be a couple of sentences. I suspect you've already given me one that will be hard to beat, but what is your best or just your favorite employee advocacy anecdote?
You know, I think just it's not really specific. It's a little more general, but just when you that moment when you kind of explain the value of social media to someone and they get it, and then or employee advocacy. I'm tying social and employee advocacy together, but when you explain the value of, you know, helping your brand and building your own brand at the same time, when you explain the value of we have millions of eyes on our posts, we have thousands and thousands of clicks to our website, we have 200 and, you know, whatever, however many hundreds of thousands of dollars generated from social media and employee advocacy that are actually in our pipeline in Salesforce because of my job. And they're like, oh, now I get why social is important. Now I get why employee advocacy is important. And then they go and like tell other people. That's like that aha moment when they're like, oh, this isn't just posting, you know, like my son posting on Instagram. This is like actually one of our biggest channels and one of the most important things, and is run by one person. You know, it makes me look good. It makes me feel good. It makes them see the value in employee advocacy and social media. So there's not one specific moment, but um, that moment has happened many times with many employees from, again, SDRs all the way up to ELT team. And I love when that moment happens.
That is a phenomenal answer. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate that. Yeah, and for all the listeners, please do go follow Jordan on LinkedIn or across social media and check out all of the amazing work that Talkdesk are doing, a lot of which Jordan, of course, is responsible for. But Jordan, thank you so much again, man. We really appreciate you joining us today.
Absolutely. I had a blast with you too. Thank you, Lewis. Thank you, Elliot. Great to be here. Hopefully I'm on in the future. And yeah, man, this was a great time.
Round two. Sounds good. Thank you very much, guys. We'll catch you very soon.